Hey, it's me, Rob Ryan. I am back with another terrific episode of Entrepreneurial Thinkers. Some days I have these conversations and I just think to myself, what a joy my job is. From spitting bars to pitching investors, Roy Scott, the CEO and founder of Healthy Hip Hop, joined me today. First ever rapper turned entrepreneur I've ever had on the show. What a joyful conversation. Roy's journey from Kansas City to Atlanta, from hardcore gangster hip hop rapper to successful EdTech digital platform entrepreneur using hip hop music and the genre of hip hop to tell positive stories and create positive content for young people's educational value. It's just an incredible story. We dipped into his own personal journey. We dipped into some of the choices he made as a young man. We met his now long ago buried persona, his rap persona, and talked about how he segued from that persona to who he is as Roy Scott, the dad, the mature entrepreneur and business person. We talked about the synergy and similarity of music and writing songs and hip hop beats to pitching and storytelling as entrepreneurs in business. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneurial thinker, if you're just a human being who wants to hear an inspirational story filled with nuggets of wisdom and tactical advice for you on your journey, this is the story and the conversation you want to enjoy. And I'm really convinced that you will enjoy it as much as he and I did making it for you.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And as you may or may not know, this is the show where I get to have weekly conversations with some of the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry as we come together to try to leave the world a little bit better than we found it. And I know today's guest is all about trying to leave the world a little bit better than he found it. I'm super excited that we're joined today by Roy Scott. Roy is the founder and CEO of Healthy Hip Hop, amongst many things that he does in his community. And so let me tell you a little bit about him before we meet him and we dive right into this fun conversation we're going to have today. Roy, honestly, is my first rapper turned entrepreneur to ever sit down with me and talk about his journey. So I'm kind of stoked about that part of today as well. From the grind of the hip hop scene to boardrooms filled with investors, Roy didn't just flip the script. He was honestly flipping tables, so to speak, to disrupt a set of cultural stereotypes and experiences, to turn a commonly accepted thing like hip hop music into a powerful and positive educational tool and business. He went from spitting bars for fans to dropping mics to raise millions from investors, not just for profit, but for purpose. When his 4-year-old son echoed some of his own explicit lyrics, Roy didn't just change his playlist, he changed his mission. Now he's the founder and CEO of Healthy Hip Hop, a storytelling pitch coach to emerging entrepreneurs. He's merging beats, tech, and purpose to build essentially kind of the Sesame Street of the 21st century, right? He's pitched to sharks, he's won over Google, and now he's here to drop some real talk to us. Ladies and gentlemen, Roy Scott is in the building with us today, and this is not going to be your typical entrepreneurial thinker story. Roy, welcome to the show, buddy. It's great to see you.
Hey, what's up, bro? I'm gonna tell you what, that intro right there, that was something special, man. I'm hype. I'm ready to go. I love it.
Let's go, man. Hey, I'll follow you around and before your meetings, right? Whatever you need. I love it, man. No, it's great to see you. We haven't seen each other in a while. We follow each other. We're connected on social media. Little background context for our audience. We met through mentorship, part of the Black Ambition Prize, if I'm remembering, that's the exact way to describe it, Black Ambition Prize program. My good friend Kiana Patterson, who is also an alumnus of this show and a great friend here in Los Angeles that everybody knows, had connected us as part of the group, and I was honored and privileged to have the chance to get to know Roy a little bit more, and then have been following his journey since then, and it's just an incredible journey. So I was eager to get him on the show to talk about it with all of us. Roy, where are you joining us from today? Where are you in the country?
Atlanta, coming in from Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, nice. We're doing a little East Coast, West Coast thing, LA and Atlanta. And I love too that also helps us kind of add a different perspective to kind of the idea of entrepreneurial economies are able to be built everywhere, right? Like you're a Midwestern guy, like I was a Midwestern guy, Chicago. I think you were Kansas City, right? So born and raised Midwest, and we found our way to the opposite ends of the country. But the truth is that entrepreneurialism runs deep everywhere in this country.
100%.
And Atlanta is one of the burgeoning entrepreneurial economies in the country. So I'm super stoked to have you share that perspective with us.
Absolutely.
First question, and this we can take this any way you want, man. But it was the first thing on my mind when I started putting together the script for the show is how can we all apply more entrepreneurial thinking or maybe innovative, creative thinking to the music that we create and consume, and related, like how can we think about the music that we consume having the potential to be like an educational force for good?
Right. I think a couple things is one is be more intentional and on purpose, right? So a lot of the times, especially when I was young, it was the beat, it was the sound, right? So that's always is going to kind of capture your attention. However, as you become more mature and as you get more intentional, like you want to be on purpose about what you're listening to. So when I really first started my transition of getting out of like gangster rap and getting into like, okay, I'm going to create this new lane of, healthy hip hop for kids, I changed a lot of what I listened to. And a lot of that started with like just listening to instrumentals because I'm a writer anyway, right? So I'm a writer and producer. So listening to instrumentals, I also listen to a lot of old school stuff like, Osley Brothers. I'm talking about, the old school stuff. So,
Classics.
right. So I think being more intentional about what we listen to and understanding like the overall just impact of music on mood and behavior. And so again, that's one thing I just didn't get. I think most of us, it's kind of just music is naturally, I believe, the universal language. So it's just something that gets us moving. It's something that, can kind of get you excited or can have you nostalgic thinking about some old stuff. So I think, again, being more intentional and also understanding the impact of music kind of help us create a better playlist for our life, right? Create a better playlist for our life. And also, if we are writers and producers, kind of like what you talked about my story with my son, just I want to be more intentional about the energy that I'm, outputting. I don't want to put out anything that's going to be negative or hurtful to myself or anybody else.
Yeah. Do you find, it's funny, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about it, and it's not a direct parallel, but I'll kind of draw a little comparison, right? I think about this show, right? This is my art, right? This is my music. And so I think about it in the context of, sometimes I get caught up in thinking about like too hard about like, well, this is the audience that I'm crafting these conversations for. But then I'll be surprised every once in a while when someone who I wouldn't have necessarily put into that profile will say to me that they listen to it, or like in my case, occasionally it's my niece, my 17-year-old niece, who I think mostly she's listening to it because she knows that I talk about her oftentimes, right? But like she will listen to it, and then that changes my perspective. So I'm curious, as an expert in the field now and as a musician, like sometimes do we just create music or consume music like and just assume like we're the only ones listening to it, and therefore like you don't think about it like that your 4-year-old son could be listening to it, or your 16-year-old niece could be listening to it, and oh shit, if they're listening to it, like I might not have written this song this way, or I might not have said that, I might not have propagated this message out there to the community. Is that something we need to be better about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, that's a part of I think being intentional piece, but also like being true to yourself, right? So what are things that you love and things that are you passionate about, that you're passionate about, and then leaning on that? Because I think a lot of the time, like you said, we'll get in a headspace or overthinking, like, well, I want to create this for this audience, or I want to do this for this segment. And then it kind of moves you out of like your true authentic self, right? Of the things that you love to do and you're passionate about. And that's been a big part of even, my journey and even my transition. So you got to imagine coming out of doing like gangster rap to doing like hip hop for kids, I was getting a lot of pushback, but I stayed true to my mission. I knew what my calling was. I felt it. I run into some of my friends and like, oh yeah, man, you're like the Blues Clues of rap. They were kind of,
Nice.
you know,
Okay, I mean, at least they were clever in their criticisms,
right.
right?
And I was like, you know what? You're right.
Right. And you're
So,
like, and that's okay.
exactly. So staying true to yourself. So I think it kind of can, be intentional about both. You definitely want to stay true to yourself, but then also create stuff that I would say is like at least has a certain standard quality of sound, like it's industry standard, as far as just the quality of the sound, but definitely stay true to you, your voice, and again what you want to project out, into the world, because I really believe that if you project the energy you project out, it comes back to you. So I've been really on a high level, like positive kick. It's just as much as I was on the other side of it,
Yeah.
and I suffer some of the repercussions of that. Now it's like I'm completely dedicated to this side of it, and now enjoying the benefits of just kicking out, being a positive influence to people of all ages.
Yeah. We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Haney and Company. We all know that in today's complex financial landscape, having a trusted advisor can make all the difference. Since 1960, Haney and Company has been providing comprehensive accounting services to a diverse range of clients, from small businesses to large corporations. With nearly 400 professionals across 13 locations, they offer services in tax, audit, business consulting, and client advisory. In fact, their commitment to excellence has earned them recognition from Accounting Today and Forbes magazines. At Haney and Company, though, it's not just about balancing books. It's about building lasting relationships based on trust and mutual growth. So visit HaneyCPAs.com. That's HaneyCPAs.com to learn how they can support your business's financial journey. Thinking about something you just said there, it feels like, I mean, music at its core, right? Just like painting or any writing, it's just such a deep personal expression, right? So we can't deny people the chance to express their life, like their experience, like their lived experience, as they would say, right? And a lot of that can be traumatic and painful and dangerous, and there's a violence to it, right? In some regards, like, because that's what some artists' lives have been. I think I'll think of a totally different example, like to put context around it, right? You'll often hear the comedian, right? And we always assume that like the comedian is like the funny guy. And the truth is, when you meet these comedians or you see their stories about them, they're often like very sad people. Like they're often like very depressed, darker people. And they found comedy as the tool to kind of help them get out of their own darkness. So in some ways it's gotta be tough artistically, right? Because we could easily sit here on a high horse and be like, hey, I mean, it's about the beat, it's about the music, it's about the line. And we could just as easily tell positive stories, but that would be manufactured then. People who have positive lived experiences should tell those positive stories, is what you're saying. But if people want to use music to tell the stories of their traumatic childhoods or their experiences that were darker, like they should have the ability to do that too. We've just, like you said, I think the big takeaway is like, we've just got to be intentional as artists and then intentional as listeners, as consumers, about what we consume.
100%. And it's really about how we frame it. I think it's inspiring to hear people's stories who have been in challenging, adverse circumstances as kids.
Right.
I think we all have suffered some type of, some type of traumatic stuff as a child or even as adults, or we've been in some adverse circumstances, right? So I really think it's ultimately about how you frame it. So it's more about, hey, just like I'm doing, I want to give the game on, listen, I was in the streets. I was doing that. However, becoming a father and wanting to be the best man I could be for him, my family, et cetera, for other people, I had to make this transition. So being able to frame it in a way to where you're not necessarily glorifying it. So it's like, I understand it. I come from it. I was in it. However, there's a better way, and there's no judgment in it. Right. So I think that's kind of a fine line, but also, I still listen to, I keep my ear to the street just to kind of stay attuned with the sound and the energy of who's the artist that's going. I've got kids, so my kids, they keep me fully in touch, right? So I think it's just how you frame it. It could be a very, fine line. So that's why I always communicate. I talk to artists all the time, like mainstream artists. I work closely with a few of them. And so it's like it's a mutual love and respect where I understand that side of the game. However, it's like, we should start changing this narrative. You can tell your story, but let's start glorifying, the right things. And also you got a lot of young artists who just haven't quite made that transition like that. When I was 20 or 21 years old, like I was
come on, man. Like the decisions we make at 20 and 21, right? Oh my, right? Yeah.
Right.
100% true. That's awesome. Thank you. I was thinking about this next question. It's more of a comment. I'd love your feedback. I say this all the time. So I was thinking about you in particular when I was getting ready for this episode, right? I think, personally, I think entrepreneurs are much closer of a cultural parallel to like starving artists and musicians than we are to like the corporate monopoly titan CEO that the startup industry kind of VC narrative pushes. Like the VC narrative is always telling us like, you could grow up to your startup, you could become Zuckerberg, you could become Elon Musk, like you could become a bunch of guys that I just realized these are a bunch of idiots that I just named, right? But like you could become that. And it's like this corporate CEO over these billion-dollar enterprises. And I'm like, most entrepreneurs I meet, early stage, late stage, doesn't matter. They're much closer to basically like starving artists and musicians doing it for the love of the game than they are to like that. Do you agree with that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I think you are just that. As a startup founder, you are a starving artist.
Right?
You have to be a creative thinker. You have to be innovative, resilient, scrappy. Sometimes you don't know where the next dollar is coming from, either if that's investment or through customers. So I think there's a lot of similarities, and you just got to be, you got to be resilient. You got to stick to the script. And a lot of the times it just pushes you, it continues to push you to, become a better version of yourself and pivot. Like, so now as you continue to pivot, of course, those folks you named, that, in the VC world, they always want to, they're focused on the unicorns, right? So here are
Right.
the unicorn companies that did these things. And, just depends on what your personal goals and aspirations are. Maybe you want to sell a
Yeah.
company for $1 billion. Maybe you want to do a social enterprise that impacts 1 billion people. But whatever it is, I think you're right. We're closer to the starving artist, scrappy, figuring this game out. So even when I, made the pivot of, you know, getting out of the streets, doing healthy hip hop, but then making the pivots, even entering this VC arena, I had
Yeah.
no education about it. I had no
Right.
information. I didn't even know it existed. So just kind of navigating that world, it took a lot of me rediscovering myself, because at some point I was even like putting on a bow tie. I mean, I was trying to, I was going to certain rooms and I was like, I want them to know my story, but I don't want to know how much I was
Right.
in the streets. Like, so
Right.
but going through all that now, it allows me to authentically show up as me. So I can show up me with my hat to the back. This is how I show up to meetings. I mean, I represent the healthy hip hop brand.
Right. Be
I say,
you.
yeah. So, so it took me a while though to get to that point. But just like you said, I think it started off as, and still am, just I'm a starving artist. I'm scrappy and I love what I'm doing. And I'm just want to stay passionate and true to my
Yeah.
passions.
And that last bit there is the key to me, right? It's I oftentimes, as we met, right, mentor entrepreneurs, different ages, stages of their journey. And to me, the thing I'm always looking for is, and I sometimes use a little scare tactic, right? It's like, hey, you meet the 22-year-old. It's like, okay, so at 32, if you were 32 and you were still working on this, like, would you still be down for this? And that is like a great separator, right? Like,
Right.
what? That's insane, right?
Right.
Because I'm looking for that, like the starving artist, like, I mean, think about when we were kids, right? When you're out, past dark, you're playing ball, and it's like, man, I would have played ball. Like, I literally, if my mom would have not let me sleep, I would have just played ball all night because I just loved it. It wasn't, yeah, I had my fantasies. He hits the 3-pointer at the buzzer, like, but like, that's not why I was out there that night. Like, I was out there that night because I just loved doing it, and the proverbial, like, I would do this for free.
Right.
Right. And
I
I feel like that's, to me, I feel like that's such a parallel for like great entrepreneurs like yourself, is that
that's a fact. And what I'm learning is it's a lifetime commitment, right? So
it
there's
really is. Yeah. It's not 10 years.
right. I mean, you could be this thing 15, 20 years, and that's what I'm learning now. And I was actually just talking to a founder about this, ironically, right before I hopped on this call, this podcast, is like, they were saying, because on the technical side, I've been in the game about 5 years, right? So but still, as 5 years, some people I'm talking to, they're like, well, you're a more like, seasoned company. However, most companies who exit or doing that's 10, 15 years plus, right? So 5, I'm still kind of early to the game. However, I've been doing the music side of it for probably about 15 years, as far as like doing the healthy hip hop music. Cause I wasn't thinking tech. I wasn't thinking education out the gate. It was just like, I'm doing music for kids. And then as I wanted to, again, pivot, learn, and grow, as we talked about, I was like, okay, this is how we're going to scale a business XYZ. So, but what I'm learning, ultimately, the point I'm making is just, it's a lifetime commitment. So I'm
Yeah.
committed for life because I love it and I want to help people. Of course, I want to, obviously make money and do things, for my family to continue to provide a high quality of life for them, but it's a lifetime commitment.
Yeah. Good for you. And that's a perfect segue too. You're a good podcast guest. So let's do that, right? You turned this moment of parental panic that we talked about in the beginning of your son repeating these lyrics into this $1 million pivot, right? So talk to us about the business story of healthy hip hop. So this is your commercial. You can tell us kind of the snapshot of how it's grown. You know, who are its users or partners, right? What's the impact that it's had, and then maybe before we finish, like just talk about what your vision for it is as well.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, the parent panic. So, like seeing my son repeating my lyrics that promoted drugs and violence, I was just like, I'm not continuing this, part of the game. So, from that to, okay, going to what I know, which was music. I knew how to, date myself here, print and physical CDs, right? That was my hustle. CDs were fading, they were on their way out. This was like late 2010s. And so that's what, as I just mentioned, I went through a few programs of like, okay, I got the music, but how am I going to actually create a scalable business? Because the music industry has been flipped on its head with streaming. So started seeing who was engaging with our music the most, which was teachers and educators. So I was like, okay. So I interviewed a few educators. They were like, well, we're using this because a lot of schools are taking out PE, they're taking out physical activity. This is an enrichment for us. It's like, okay, wow. So it went from us to just doing music to creating curriculum around the music to now saying, okay, instead of us performing live in one school, because we did over 1,500 performances in schools all across the country, also like larger venues and doing stuff for professional teams. We were like, okay, how do we scale this without us physically being there? And then it's like, okay, well, we have to get in the tech space. I always loved technology. I'm the last year of the millennials, 81. So I got to see pretty much tech from the beginning, right? From the first G1 Android phones to the new iPhones, et cetera. So I always loved technology, but just didn't understand how to build it. So I was like, okay, let's make this pivot. Went through multiple programs and started building the web platform for educators and then the mobile application for parents. So it was like, that was my learning curve, and then going to raise capital in the VC world. And so now to where the platform is built, we have roughly over, 15K active users monthly. We've raised over, $1.7 million for the company. And now we're positioned for scale, right? So saying it to say like, even that sounds like a lot, right? But all that has basically allowed us to build the product,
Right.
learn how we're going to scale the product. And now we're officially like going to market to really scale it up.
All that hard work and accomplishment just got you to this point.
Right. And so now it's like, okay, a few more strategic moves to really hit the gas and scale to, hit 5-10 million in annual revenue, to grow to, 100,000 plus users, and then kind of reverse the game a little bit. Cause now, VC, since I started to now, things have shifted quite a bit just in a short amount of time.
Indeed.
And it's very, very challenging. It always has been, but now there's like another layer to it. And so now my goal is to show those who have previously invested in me and on future stakeholders that here's what we've done, here's what we've been able to build, here's the traction, here's the revenue, and now we need this next level raise of capital to kind of, skyrocket us to the moon. So yeah, it's been a learning curve, but I've been in it and just learning and pivoting and staying resilient through it all.
I love that. So if I heard it correctly, users, so there are young people listening, but they're teachers as like users. So clients would then be the schools or school
Correct.
districts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So a mix. So basically, school districts. So our biggest contract is with Dallas Independent School District. We also sell to individual schools. The homeschool network right now is really big for us. We're kind of making a pivot into that space. And speaking of that, that's what we're kind of also leaning into our new direct-to-consumer offering. And so that's more of an individual parent who, if they want the annual subscription to the app, if they want our rhyming dictionary, we have stuff that goes right to parents. Because what we're learning is we've been able to close some of these bigger school contracts. We got our first government contract. However, those are long sales cycles, take a lot longer to close them. They're really challenging. So, but we figured a repeatable model with that. But now it's like we see a bigger opportunity on the direct-to-consumer side, which again is just interesting how to tell that story. Because when you're talking to investors, they're like, well, you got to stick to one, right? So we're being
some investors are like, stick to one, and then the next investor is like, oh, I love your creativity, and then the third investor is like, oh, dual revenue streams, this is great. Yeah.
Right.
You got to design your business and your story because it is a viable business model, and then you'll eventually find people that will believe in it or won't. Like that's
100%. And that's where
Yeah.
we're at. So we just out here, basically doing the work, proving the concept, getting the traction, so it makes sense, and we can, again, get this next level of funding, but ultimately bringing the revenue. I've been really focused on the revenue right now.
Where, if it unfolds ideally, right? Like, let's just say over the next 5-6 years, like, how does it grow? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned there, to kind of kick it off, like the Sesame Street of the 21st century, the urban Disney, we see ourselves being an iconic children's brand. So, a global leader in children's content, entertainment, technology, education. So that's where we see this thing going, is impacting lives across the globe and being an iconic children's brand. And so it's funny, while, I say urban Disney, a couple of things. Well, Disney's actually originally from Kansas City. You mentioned my hometown roots. I'm from AC. He moved to LA, right? And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
brought Disney to what it is today. And
It's a great part of the story that I'm a weird LA history nerd, so I know the whole story, but it is a weird part of the story that most people never talk about.
right. Yeah. So that was and a big part of the story. Like, I think it also goes to show, like, Kansas City, that's actually, it's a kind of a growing ecosystem entrepreneurship. There are a lot of cool things happening there, but it's a great place to test things as well. So Disney, he basically tested it, got the groundwork, and then he went to, a bigger market. I think it's just all about just the size of the market also. And LA is where, film and entertainment, and one of the hubs of it, other than, New York City. However, also, Disney's brother's name was Roy. You know what I mean? So
Right?
there's a lot of synergies here. So we wanted
Love
to
that.
become the urban Disney. So that's where we ultimately see ourselves. Our North Star is iconic children's brand, transforming a generation through hip hop culture. Hip hop music and culture is the most consumed genre in the world. And we know that, and we love the culture. Our goal is to position ourselves as like the hub of hip hop for children and families. And this is kind of the introduction into the game.
Yeah. We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Chisos Capital. Everyone knows that raising capital is hard. And frankly, finding the next pool of entrepreneurs to get access to as limited investors is sometimes impossible too. Do you have a big idea, a dream you're building, but you're struggling to find early funding? Well, Chisos is changing the game for founders, creators, athletes, and investors. Whether you're launching a startup, growing your creative brand, or training for the big leagues, Chisos backs you. Chisos uniquely invests up to $100,000 in people, not just products, whether they be entrepreneurs, creators, or even athletes. With their unique CISA model, convertible income share agreements, founders get flexible funding without giving up equity or ownership, and investors get attractive returns and great upside with less risk. Chisos works for both investors and the people bringing our world to life. If you're seeking access to a truly diverse pool of deals, or you're someone who feels overlooked by the VC game, Chisos is ready to back you. So apply now at chisos.io. What's something about hip hop, like as a music genre or as a cultural phenomenon, that most people still don't get, that most people still misunderstand?
I think they misunderstand that when hip hop was born, it was actually what we're doing. We're kind of taking it back to its roots. Hip hop was born in New York City when there was a lot of, gang violence, drug violence, different things like drug activity stuff going on. And hip hop was a safe place for people to come together in the community to rap, the MCs to, that's where, breakdancing and the breaking of the beat, everything was kind of born. It was about community. And if you think about even some of the original hip hop records from, Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper Delight to, KRS One, Self Destruction, and all of them, like, it was really more what you would call, I guess, conscious rapper, like more like, positive messaging behind it. Then it kind of took a turn in the mid 80s, late 80s and the 90s to kind of more of a gangster kind of theme. So however, like, I think a lot of people don't understand, like, hip hop started about community and love, and like people celebrating their differences in a safe place, right? So I think what we're trying to do with healthy hip hop is honor that, and still, again, not knock what's going on now, because hip hop is continuing to evolve, but kind of take it back to its roots, but in a way that's relevant to what's happening now and that is really geared towards children and families.
Do you ever miss rapper Roy? Do you ever miss the old rapper version of you? Or
no, I do not. So
Yeah.
Mac James was that was my rapper. That was my persona back then.
Okay.
Do not miss him.
We do not miss Mac.
No, Mac is done. He's cooked. So but definitely, I was just talking to one of my other founder friends about this. He was giving my credit. He's like, man, I'm proud of you that you still, you're still doing what you love as far as recording. So I still, even as Roy Scott, I still release music for
Okay.
adults. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about family. It's about, building legacy. It's about this real life stuff that's going on. So I still write and record and release music. Matter of fact, I'm getting ready to do some recording this week. So I still do what I love. So I'm still rapping. I mean, I'm still rapping Roy for the kids, and I'm still Roy Scott. The difference is now is I can, again, we talked about your true authentic self. I'm just me. So rapping Roy and Roy Scott, I don't have to hide either one. I mean, it's just like, this is me just being my true authentic self. So I'm still doing what I love. I'm still rapping, but Mac, we had to, he had to part. That was a whole, it's interesting. That was definitely a whole persona. And it was also just something that I would not be proud to represent right now as a,
Yeah.
as a man. So
As an adult, yeah. I
right,
mean, right.
exactly.
It was a character that then dangerously could become part of who you are, right? Or you could become it.
100%. And it did. And I was in a lot of the
Yeah.
wrong circles, and I was, it got dangerous. So I was definitely fortunate and blessed to get out and be on this side of it and still do what I love.
You have a fascinating story. I mean, even some of your background for the people that will watch this on video, he's got a great background in his office there. He's got some balls with autographs and all that stuff. So, but if I remember the story correctly, like you at one point, young life, like you chose music over a basketball scholarship. If I was remembering correctly, like, so talk to us two things. Kind of just talk to us about like your upbringing, right, and how you kind of got to that point when you had to make that choice, and then how did the people around you feel about that choice at that moment?
Right. So really kind of also my early origin and introduction to music was my dad. My dad was a bass player. And so he had me around bands. He had me probably in rooms I shouldn't have been in when I was really young. And I just loved music and I started producing. So that was kind of my spark and love for music. However, I also love sports. Love football originally, but I was just getting beat up. I was a little bit taller. As when I was younger, I was still slim. They had me as a lineman. So I was getting beat up. I was like, I'm cool. Just give me a basketball. So I started hooping a lot and became really good at it. So after high school, I had a few Division I opportunities, MU, Texas Southern, Iowa. And again, just didn't really have my head on my shoulders, didn't have a lot of guidance. And so I was like, instead of, going to college and pursuing my basketball career, I'm going to rap in the streets of Kansas City. Now,
Okay.
somebody could tell me, you can go to school and still rap, but I was just so
But nobody told you that.
right. Nobody told me, and I was just so at that time just lost. I mean, I was just out there. It wouldn't have mattered. So,
Yeah.
but the cool thing about that is, it obviously linked into my story. But as you mentioned, the basketball that I have here, and again, just how everything kind of works itself out. I'm a man of faith, so I just believe how just things kind of fall in place. Is like this basketball. I actually won this at a pitch competition, Legacy Classic pitch competition. It was hosted by Michael B. Jordan. And so Michael B. Jordan and their team, they were highlighting underrepresented founders who were doing like dope tech company ideas, but even had some social impact. So Michael B. Jordan signed this ball. And so that was a big deal for me. I still work with his team. He's on as a strategic advisor for the company. So it just kind of shows full circle. I was on the court when I got pictures. I'm maybe have to show you, get you one to put on a podcast, but it was like him handing me the ball on the court. So, I love the hoop. So it's kind of a full circle story. But I mean, for my mom, she obviously wasn't happy about me choosing
Okay.
that over that. But
Right.
however, yeah, I was a lost cause at that point.
Yeah. No, we do what we can as parents, but we're going to make our decisions as young people, especially strong-willed, talented young people who think they have all kinds of options, right?
Right.
And although, again, as we say, we buried Mac, like you carved out a life, like you carved out a career doing that. So it's not like it's not like you had some, side hobby that wasn't serious. Like you became very good at it.
Right.
You just, it was a chapter in your life. It wasn't your whole life.
100%.
You've been on, you referenced it just a little bit there. You've been in corporate America, right? You've been in the big boardrooms. You've been on the floor of big arenas with people giving you basketballs, ironically, as trophies, right? Right. You've done the Shark Tank type things, and you've also been on stages rapping, right? I mean, like performing in front of audiences in that regard. So it's essentially performance either way, right? Roy, the entrepreneur, Mac, the rapper. Like, as you look back now, as the older guy that you are, as the dad, as the more wise, gray-haired guy, right? Like, where do you feel, or where did you feel like your most complete self?
I think now, and I think as you mentioned, like all those experiences kind of lent those, moments up into becoming who I am now. So I think now I can be my most true and authentic self and show up just as Roy and just, be true to me and my word. However, like you said, those experiences kind of all blended together. And I say that because I was, as I help founders, a lot of with pitching, a lot of stuff I tell them is like, this is theater, right? So they want to ultimately they want a compelling story. They want a show, right? So I believe a lot of me rapping and being on stages and those things like has really served me well as now being a public speaker and going on those stages. It's kind of a similar concept. However, it's just a different vertical. Now I get on stages to tell my story, tell my transformation. And then also, if I'm speaking to investors, how I'm going to build a scalable business that's going to see a return. And so I think all those experiences kind of lent themselves together to now it's like I draw on a lot of that, the being on stages as a rapper to now being on stages as an entrepreneur or a, keynote speaker to tell my story. But I really believe like right now, as I mentioned, earlier, this is a lifetime journey. Right now, I'm just my most confident, most authentic, true self. I can talk about, my past experiences. However, right now I'm just just really true to who I am, and I don't have to do any, sugarcoating or any, anything that's not just authentic and real.
You can feel it. It's awesome to feel literally come through the screen as I'm listening to you. You segued me again, which is fantastic. Thank you for that. Right. I was going to ask a slightly different version of this question. Now I'm going to ask it differently because I'm fascinated. When you're writing like a story, a pitch, a stage presentation, or a meeting presentation, do you write kind of with a musical sensibility? Like, are you writing saying in your head, like, this is how I'm going to tell this story, and it has this kind of arc of energy? And like, is that how you're approaching it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, also like if I'm writing a song, it's kind of almost the same. It's the same, concept I apply to it. So a lot of the times for me, the music, like the actual soundtrack, the beat, it will kind of determine the direction that I'm going to go. And if I'm pitching, that's kind of more I have to kind of craft the story around like the deck, the slides to make sure it's all a real cohesive story. So it's almost like putting together a rap, putting together 16 bars. You mentioned earlier, like spitting bars. It's like, it's a really kind of a similar flow for me. So when I'm going into it, and in fact, one of my most recent pitches, and again, like, before I was saying, I was trying to be careful about, I don't want to come across, I don't want to give up too much of my past and like, I want to show up polished. I don't want to show up, as like this street guy who's doing a new thing. But however, a couple of my mentors were people, they were like, listen, man, you need to do like a little rap at the end of the pitch we want to hear. So like, I didn't do a whole rap, but like 8 bars. Like I threw that on the end of one of my pitches and it went really well. So yeah, it's kind of the same concept. Like when you're creating, being creative is just like, and now what I will say the only difference is for this pitch, it does change some. However, it's pretty much the same kind of core story. So it's like I've said it so many times that like now it's like I can say it in my sleep. Now it's just like I'll add some tweaks and touches here and there, depending on like, okay, if I'm speaking to social impact investors, I want to highlight some of that. Or if I'm talking to investors, I know this is purely about the bottom line. I want to highlight these numbers. I can make the tweaks, but since I have that core in place, it's like, it's repetitions. Like now I can just try. I'm Roy Scott, founder and CEO of Healthy Hip Hop. We are building the urban Disney, fusing hip hop culture with innovative technology, education, and positive attributes to improve student learning environments. And I just,
It's
but
music.
right.
It is music.
Right.
And that's why because last time when we visited in the context of mentorship and we had a couple of sessions together, right? It was more, I'm asking hard questions. I need answers. I'm trying to get information, right? But this is, I'm platforming you, right? I'm asking you questions that I'm sitting back and I'm literally just enjoying listening to. And I hear the music of your story. Like I hear the music of what you're trying to do. And I'm not going to lie, like you're going to laugh at me for this, but I pride myself in particular on the introduction, the bios that we do at the beginning. And it has become a little bit of a thing on this show. Like, that people love it. So I'm not going to lie, like I put some extra effort into yours because I intentionally wanted to kind of have it be kind of like a song. I wanted it to have a lyrical energy to it, right? Because I think that's who you are. And so as I was writing it with a little help from ChatGPT, like filling in, I was kind of crafting this, like, because by the way, it's selfishly, I do the same thing. Like I asked you that just as a setup because frankly, I believe the same thing, right? I believe that ultimately, and I use the writing a book, or it's a play, it's music, like whatever it is that is the framework that you look at the world artistically through. Like if you can imbue that in how you write the scripting that is your presentation, your story deck, your pitch, whatever we want to call it, it just comes across so much more naturally because we're humans. Like the people that are listening to you, investor or not, or executive or client, like they're humans too, and so they're just built to react to the music of life.
100%.
Which
And
is incredible.
let me tell you again, that intro, that might have been the best intro I've heard. I'm not gonna be honest with you.
Yes, I love it. That's
Wow.
great.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Plaintext Capital. You know, investing in Web3 and cryptocurrencies isn't about jumping on the latest trends. It's about understanding where the market is headed and why. Plaintext Capital is a digital asset investment firm focused on long-term strategies backed by deep research, backing the best Web3 companies and protocols, and investing in the newest asset classes of the future. They believe that Web3 crypto will drive digital innovation for decades to come, creating significant value for investors. In fact, their team of highly skilled professionals work with institutions and serious individual investors who want clarity in a space full of hype and noise. So if you're looking to cut through the chaos and invest with purpose, Plaintext Capital brings a disciplined, high-conviction approach to investing. You can learn more and meet the team at plaintextcapital.com.
Before we get to these last kind of next couple questions, I want to put this on a pedestal, right? So you've now, in addition to all that you're doing, you have found some space to, and I'm not going to say like give back, just like giving back, like you're doing it for charity, right? You're taking some of your talents and your experiences, and you are literally offering those services and those capabilities, that coaching to others to give back. Like you want to help them have a smoother, less ragged path than you had or than I had. We all do that. That's why I mentored you, right? Same thing. So now that you're helping others master their pitch or story, like what you I think already alluded to some of them, but like what are some of the lessons or the tactics that you're teaching people? And I'm sure it's a blend of like your entrepreneurial storytelling skills and your hip hop performance models. And like, I'm sure that it's a blend of both, but maybe give us a couple like tactical examples. Like, hey, when I'm coaching like young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs, like here's the structure. You don't have to give away your secret sauce, but like, here's the structure that you help people with.
Yeah. Oh, three main pillars. One is just, as you mentioned, just, compelling storytelling. So I'll listen to their current pitch, or if they, at least have a baseline of it. Some would go from scratch, but a lot of the times the founders I work with, they have a little bit more traction. So it's like, okay, we have a story. I'll listen to it, and it's like, okay, how do we just, again, make a few tweaks to make this really compelling, to hit on a few key things, to some eye openers, some different stuff that's really going to engage the crowd, get them excited, keep their attention, and continue that conversation, and hopefully get to a check, right? So the compelling storytelling is one piece of that. We just clean that up. The second part of it is getting all your assets in line. So like executive summaries, pitch decks, investor decks. A lot of the times,
Okay.
I'm talking with founders, they don't understand the difference, between the two. It's like, oh no, here's the pitch deck is going to be a lot less, verbiage, more images, versus your investor deck will have a little bit more or a lot more, verbiage. So getting your assets in line. And then the third part is finding where the money is at. And so one of the things I'm really talking to early stage founders is about is non-dilutive money, or just what they want to call it a grant, but it's basically like funds that you receive that you don't have to give up equity in your company.
Sure.
And there's a whole lot more of these opportunities that exist now that we just are not aware of. So I'm like, okay, here's where it's at. And so you have to apply. And it's still a numbers game. It's very competitive. So I'm just kind of teaching those kind of three main pillars, but we do dive a little bit deeper on like, being like you're in LA, like I got a founder in LA I'm helping. I'm like, listen, you got to be in those circles. So like,
You got
expert
to
help.
know Kiana Patterson.
You got to know Kiana Patterson. Matter of fact, I was going to say it earlier. I just had a call with her the other day.
Oh,
She's
nice.
yep. So she's been incredibly helpful. But being in those circles, so they know you, they see you know your business, and these are people. It's about relationships.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of top things that I'm focused on. And then, like you mentioned, when I first was doing this, and I love doing it. I just was just giving like free game to like
Sure.
whoever people I'm coming in contact with. And then my mentor was like, you know, I love your heart posture towards this, Roy, and still keep that. However, this is a business. Like you need to. So I formed a business called Life's a Pitch, and I'm just now actually it's a good time in launching the website, launching everything. I actually have an online course I'll have as well. That'll be kind of more affordable than if you want to work directly with me. And I'm making sure I just carve out time because that's one of the things I love too. Is I just love helping people like on their journey and like you said, sharing that information so you can avoid some of these pitfalls and kind of have a clearer path to making your dreams a reality.
That's terrific. And yeah, good timing if that all is kind of rolling out here soon. This episode, we're recording it today. For those that are listening, it's, I think, May 12th or 13th. And it'll probably release like middle of June to end of June. So 4 or 5 weeks or so. So yeah, that'll be fantastic. And people can find, I love that. Life's a pitch. Life really, I mean, it's also clever, nice wording, right? You act like you're a good wordplay writer over here, right? But also like life is actually like, subtle meaning, right? Life is really a pitch. Like you're always selling. We're always selling. We don't think we are. We don't, or we don't, not maybe think is the wrong word. We don't appreciate that we are.
Right. But it kind of goes into what you were talking about earlier is like when we were asked that question is like the intentionality. So you are always pitching yourself. That doesn't, I don't care if you're applying for a job, if you're trying to get a date, or if you're trying, whatever you're doing, you're trying to get money for your company, you're pitching, right? So life's a pitch, and like kind of again tied in the wordplay, and also kind of turning something, that's could be a negative into a positive.
No, it's awesome. That's awesome. You're a good writer. Let's just put it that way, right? So that's fantastic. All right, this is kind of the crazy last question before we get to our closing segment. This is just one of those I like to just challenge people's minds to expand, right? So if someone was to come along and give you $100 million tomorrow, and not a venture capitalist who said like, okay, I'm giving you this so you can go build this company. Like someone was to come along and empower you with $100 million. How would you continue to or expand upon using music and storytelling as a force for positive change with young people? Like how would you use that money to accomplish that mission?
What I would do is I would invest, in probably a school or some type of, not necessarily it wouldn't be in the format of a school, but as far as like the traditional school setting, but it would be like a way to train the youth on like using their gifts and talents to, basically kind of create good, but also create a lifestyle for their families. It kind of goes into something, an idea I had. It's like, it was called Tech House, where I was like, anytime you create like a tech company, you would have like build a piece of property with it, like a real estate house with it. So, because kind of make it safer for investors, right? Because if an investor knows at least they have something, there's some collateral there, right? That's going to build over time.
That's actually pretty clever.
Yeah. So I would do something like that, but for the youth, we're like, hey, listen, let's, build this type of maybe a compound, but with different homes where we would allow kids to kind of create and put their families in it and grow. And over time that would grow like the equity in the home, but also kind of grow the creative portfolio. But do that at scale with 100 million. You could do that at, at scale and kind of create a real cool, community and like, and just create a lot of like dope, like content that's music, video, film, or, whatever it may be, I think it would be a cool opportunity to kind of just launch, grow that, and see like over time, it's more like a generational thing, like over 100 years, see where that goes.
I love that. I would, if somebody gave it to me, I would give it to you. If somebody said, here's the 100 million to try and do this for this, like, how can we mix music and storytelling? I would literally be like, hold on, let me call Roy. Right. Because
somebody listening, they got 100 for you. Come on.
Right. Because Roy is going to help us change the world by doing that. I love it. I'm almost picturing like a combination of healthy hip hop, Life's a Pitch curriculum, right, mixed into like an institute, so to speak, right? And an institute that's probably, because it's 2025 to the end of our life, so probably primarily digital, but has a physical campus, like has a physical place that people can gather Yeah. And you could buy
Yeah,
a
have a whole
lot of you
studio.
could buy
Yeah,
a lot of land with $100 million.
right, right. Have a whole studio, and especially if you started back in my hometown of KC, you
I was
buy.
just gonna say you could buy a lot of land in KC. You could buy a decent amount of land in Atlanta, and you could buy like a nice place in LA.
Yeah, you can buy a couple homes in LA.
That's awesome. Okay, so last two questions, and these are kind of more bullet point little. So, like, I'd love to leave people with something actionable in these conversations that they can hang up from watching or listening and be like, "Oh man, I remember those two bullet pointy things he or she said at the end." Right. So I've got two different ones for you because you have such a diverse range of impact that you're creating in your work that I want to kind of highlight both of them. So the first one is, what are two or three simple things that parents or teachers, right, can do every day to infuse positive content into their homes or schools or communities? They don't have to go build a startup like you, but like something short of that. Like, what are two or three simple things that parents and teachers could do every day to make sure that they're putting positive content into the lives of the young people in their homes or schools?
Yeah, I think it kind of just ties into our conversation of being intentional. Even if you just spend 5-10 minutes a day of just engaging with kids through music, right? And so even if it's a popular song maybe they like, but like I said, talk about the instrumentals, maybe it's just the instrumental though, and you kind of create some type of, fun freestyle with them. I mean, that's what I did with my kids and created a bond with them from the beginning, like, right? So it's just like, how do you just take 5-10 minutes out of your day to just have a fun, it doesn't have to be hip hop, but whatever type of music you like, just have a fun and, interactive moment with your kids or with your students through music. And just, you'd be surprised just how many memories you create. I got so many members of my kids that, they remember, and certain music is tied to that. So it's like so nostalgic. We'll
Sure.
hear songs, oh, I remember this at this time. So I would say just start small, just 5-10 minutes a day, just having fun, dancing, reciting lyrics with your kids or students. That could be something simple that you can implement to your day.
It's terrific. And last question. This is for the aspiring founders, for the up and coming entrepreneurs who are trying to raise capital specifically. Right. So what's one underrated pitching or storytelling strategy that helped you secure your funding in your own kind of authentic way that you share with the people that you work with?
I think one of the things, I don't know if it's underrated, but it just depends on who you talk to, but I would think just leading with your why. Like for me, it was that. So it's like I'm introducing, the company, what we do, but then like really leading with why I do what I do. And even up to date, like I'm going through a program right now called 757 Accelerate out of Virginia, and really incredible like investor readiness deal. So I'm kind of refreshing everything. I'm refreshing my investor deck. I'm refreshing my data room. I mean, it's kind of going through all these things. However, when I did my pitch to start, one of the founders was like, that story about your son is like really resonated with me. So being able to, I think, lead with your why you're doing what you're doing is very like important. And sometimes it is underrated because when you're early stage, ultimately they're invested really in the jockey, not the horse, right? So they're invested in you as a founder. Are you going to be able to see and be resilient and pivot when things aren't going? Because there's a pivot is inevitable, but are you going to be a coachable, smart, like intuitive founder to be able to make those pivots and, be on point? So I think leading with your why is very important and sometimes underrated.
We're hitting problem, we're hitting competition, market, team, metrics, model, all that stuff, but making sure that we put that why right up front.
Right. Let's lead with the why, because that's again, everybody's why is a little bit different, but I think it just speaks to you said it earlier about us being humans, right? So a lot of the time these pitches, they're seeing so many when you're in it, it can kind of get, can feel robotic. It can feel like AI at this point. Like we're just going through the motions. But when you can lead with and pull on the heartstrings, like, well, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why I'm passionate about it. And like, okay, it just humanizes and it pulls on the heartstrings to get them excited, are more invested in you and your story.
Yeah, ultimately, right, as I think we said before, right? The investors sitting in a judging table or across the table from you, they're humans. They're husbands, wives, family members. They put their pants or blouses on the same as the rest of us, right? I mean, they're parents, their own dogs, right? They're working on their fitness. They're struggling with relationships. Like they're going through all the same stuff that the rest of us are. And I so many times, to your point, right? Founders will lead with the it's about the product and the solution and the speeds and feeds, as we used to say, or bits and bytes back in the day. And the truth is, it's about those things, but that's not why. That's not really why you're in that room.
100%.
Yeah, that's great, buddy. This was a pleasure. We've got to do a better job of just staying in touch with each other, not just doing a podcast, but just keeping up with what you're doing. I'm super from where we were 2 summers ago, I think it was, to now. Super proud of you. Not surprised at all that you're on the journey that you are, and that you're continuing to grow and evolve. And I love this last story that you shared about getting into this 757 acceleration program out of Virginia and essentially kind of refreshing yourself, right? That's just, I mean, that's a powerful lesson in and of itself for all of our entrepreneurial thinkers and entrepreneurs who are listening today. Is just this idea that we're never done learning, right? Roy is out here, and he's been in the game, and he's been working, and he's been succeeding at the different milestones that you have to succeed at to get invited to the next stage of the game. And yet he's out here reinventing himself and putting himself back at the bottom, saying, okay, teach me again. Teach me, like, I don't know. I learned in 2021. Teach me what's going on in 2025, right? That's hugely important. So I really, really appreciate your time, man. This is an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Anytime, man. Like I said, we've been rocking on LinkedIn, but we definitely got to find more time just to connect, man. I love everything you're doing, and thank you for mentoring me and being a part of my journey.
Absolute pleasure. How can people find you, follow you, and or follow Healthy Hip Hop or Life's a Pitch? Like, give us all the links and the socials and stuff right now.
Right. So pretty much across the board, it's just Roy Scott CEO. So that's, LinkedIn, Instagram. Those are kind of my top platforms. But even on TikTok, all that's Roy Scott CEO, and just Healthy Hip Hop, all one word, across all the platforms as well. So please follow us, check us out, man. A lot of cool stuff coming up really soon.
And to all the investors, angels, and or venture firms that are listening, like, this is a young guy you want to know. This might be something that it doesn't fit the wheelhouse of everybody's investment thesis that they put on their website. But if you're investing in good people, making big impact, creating real revenue, and transforming our educational system through the context of Healthy Hip Hop, like, this is what you're looking for. So follow him and look him up. And if anybody needs an introduction to him and can't get him on their own, like, come follow me and I'll find you and we'll connect you guys. So it was awesome. Thanks so much, bud.
I appreciate you, Rob. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. We can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.